Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aleksander Borisov, Head of Analysis of Protection Security in the InnoStage company. I would like to speak about phishing. I would like to consider its specifics during the course of the pandemic. I will touch upon such items of what are we going to do to combat it, what do we need to do to make sure that the company acts accordingly, opposing the phishing activities. And I would like to start like we do in mathematics with the variables definition. So could you please come up with phishing definition, a set of methods used by criminals to force the user do some beneficial activity for the criminal by contacting the victim via mail. And this topic is very huge, and one webinar is not enough just to completely disclose all these definitions. Therefore, in this session, we will speak about phishing targeted at employees in companies just like ourselves. In the beginning, I would like to take a look at the two key features of phishing. First of all, its efficiency and simplicity. For criteria number one, well, the numbers speak really well. As far as you can see in the slide, more than 50% of the successful hacks really started with phishing at first. And that's what I would like to focus on. This statistics shows that more than 50% means that every second company was hacked and breached, meaning that the attacker got access to the necessary data, took it away, and could spread various malware in the company, with company bearing material and reputational losses as a consequence. And that's 50+% of the cases. The second example is the omnipresence of phishing. It's very widely present. From 70 to 91% of companies have detected phishing mail. I personally humbly believe that phishing attacks has been one of the simplest implementations for the attacker, because it does not require much technical skills. It's a low entry level. So those who utilize phishing are many more than those who use other vectors for attacking. So let's just take a look at how 2020, the pandemic year, has notoriously changed the activities of the criminals and the activities of criminals. Well, starting from this online work that lots of people have switched to, as a result, more and more services have started springing up outside the perimeter, outside the secure perimeter, I mean. And moving to online activities were like that. A business representative would say, well, you guys, we have 1 week to move all of the business processes which we tackled previously offline. We need to move them online. And we have a weekend when we can tolerate downtime. But on Monday, we'll have to move directly to online functioning. See, there has not been word security mentioned in this whole monologue, which leads to unpleasant circumstances because the level of information security is not high. Very often you'd see this approach. Okay, just make it work and that's enough, that suffice. A couple of months ago, we have conducted some work analyzing the security. On day one, we have found one API function with a method allowing to reveal the user's three types of infrastructure by using the credentials, the name and the surname. We used the name and the surname, and we got email, the department, and the address. Thus, we ended up having approximately 2,000 sets of data for phishing mail for 1 hour. And we started moving to online work, like I said previously. So we stopped seeing people personally in the corridors, in the cafeteria, in the offices, and criminals make good use of that. There have been more and more attacks from those who introduce themselves as your co-workers. And this significantly improves the targeting and efficiency of phishing mail. When people move to work online, very often they need to have working means for that. They need to have tools. They would take some corporate equipment home, which is quite logical, but in the end of the day, with some personal time, there is a need to use some devices for personal need. And sometimes corporate devices start being used not for work. So this corporate device can be shared with other members of the family and used appropriately. For example, checking corporate mail from a corporate workstation is good. Checking your private emails from this corporate workstation is bad. Simple as that. A couple of words about production, about this technology. Global DMARC adoption. DMARC is the way of using SPF technology. Approximately 80% of companies do not utilize this technology in principle. And it leads us to the numbers that I'd shown you in the beginning of my presentation. So why would criminals use phishing? There are two cases to highlight. First of all, to compromise the workstation. You've compromised the workstation, connected to it, and you can spread your attack further on to where you actually need to go. If we are talking about compromising of account data, it gets more interesting. Like I said, there's a bunch of services springing up that are used to manage the business process remotely. People started having VPNs, file exchange systems, and they started using messengers, etc. So very often the company would use domain authentication for all of these services. Not always the domains are used. Sometimes they use the two-stage authentication, sometimes they use domain authentication, but we'll consider the latter one. Then in this case, when you compromise one set of data, you'll get access to all of the data, including VPN, and the attacker penetrates the infrastructure, and there is no need for them to imitate the workstation to go inside, get inside this perimeter. Very often our mail contains quite a lot of interesting data. For example, if we assume that in the marketing department there's social media, it's logical to assume the mail may contain logins and passwords to social media, and the attackers getting access to them may have very bad consequences, like reputation losses. Just remember this recent Twitter examples when Twitter accounts of very serious organizations would start feeding messages. Comrades, we do understand that pandemic is pretty bad, so if you send us a couple of bitcoins, we will reimburse you with a lot more. Obviously, those companies really didn't want to have such messages, and such incidents definitely leave very bad print and throw a bunch of shadows on the company's reputation. Also, the criminals may utilize this for their further activities. So if your email contains some interesting information that you wouldn't want the attackers to get hold of, please put a plus in the chat. If your email is quite clean and does not contain this information, put a minus in the chat, and let's just take a count in the chat. While you are doing it, I'll continue that, and in the end of my presentation, I'll do my sums and come back to you with results. So I'll continue. As you compromise the workstation, we may come up with three classic methods of compromising workstations. Executable files in their multitude, different ones contained in zipped archives with passwords, whatever. No question about that. And then the use of the services, Office applications vulnerabilities. HTA Word, for example, used to be quite popular about that. And using macros in Excel and XLM macros in Excel spreadsheets, for instance. As you compromise user data, user credentials, you may steal these credentials during the course of a session on a company resource, and more frequently stealing the credentials with phishing attacks. And for this, we will elaborate, of course. Let's just take a look at how the criminal is approaching the attack. And what can we do to increase awareness of our users and prepare them for possible phishing attacks? One more question. If you have ever been phished, if you've ever been receiving some phishing threats, please put your plus in the chat, or minus if you have not been receiving any phishing messages over the last year. And now I'll continue explaining how the attackers would prepare for these phishing attacks. First of all, they are looking for a service to clone. For this, they will be just going through the domains, finding out different types of authentication at the company's perimeter, like, for example, mail, time, different login pages. And they are interested about any services just to rely upon to prepare some kind of a message to the user for phishing purposes. And they are taking a look at the vulnerabilities on the email server. So, for example, can you really make the connection to the web to the mail server without authentication? A small example, a technical one. On the left-hand side, you can see how this connection is established to the mail server with the telnet protocol and how the sender is replaced. And on the right-hand side, you can see the fields of the electronic mail. In yellow, you have the part which is not visible. In green, you have the visible part and is sent to the recipient. The replacement of the sender is done by changing the from to subject. You can put any subject there to the from field, and the mail server would accept that, because in most of the configurations, default configurations, the mail servers would not compare to and from headings. In the message, they normally align, but you can put whatever information to the from section, and it would be accepted normally by the mail servers. Most of them, not all of them, but most of them. Once we have studied the object, once we have studied the opportunity to replace the sender. You just need to come up with the addresses to which we'll be sending such messages. One of the examples I mentioned in the beginning, and here is a more classic one, which is used more often. There are three of them. Passive method, the Hunter IO server, which has gone through the internet and has compiled a number of addresses for us. Very often this service is used to very quickly find HR addresses, marketing, contacts, whatever. But they can, of course, utilize this service for their own attacker needs. And the use of the Harvester and Folka utilities. And this nice pair can run through the domains quite easily. And it can also find email addresses and different Office documents. From these Office documents, you can retract metadata with the names of those who had worked on those documents and sometimes their logins. Translate those logins to the mail addresses and expand the email base for phishing mail. Number 3, generation of email addresses. So far, we have identified some of the email addresses and we understand which algorithm they're using. You can single out 3 such algorithms. First of all, name dot surname, then the first letter standing for the name, then all of the rest stands for surnames. All of the others are quite rare and have not been utilized. Very often the first and the second one are used. The third one is kind of difficult to work with. And right now, I would like to say that almost all of the companies these days have social media, and not only the clients and organizations are running through the news, checking through the announcements. These social groups, this social media, very often would see quite a number of employees, and the attacker may run through the list of these social media users, utilize this list, assuming that all of them work for the organization, knowing the mechanism of how these email addresses are generated. You can generate quite a sizable base for phishing mail. Of course, it's not going to be 100% correct. So for this, you'll just need to use the verify tool for verification to make sure that this email address is valid. We have gathered a list of email addresses, valid ones. Now we just need to prepare a template. This template should mandatorily have a proper outline. First of all, from whom you've received this email. So the sender is very important. Then the subject field. They will be using the relevant subject, of course. Then the signature. The signature should be legitimate, belonging to the company on behalf of which the attacker would react. A simple way. Hello, if you're doing the supplies, would you be able to send me 1,000 units of your products in a month? Normally, you would just reply once it's approved by the managers, and you'll get a signature, which is very much needed. And they will be using this for their fraudulent activities. For example, right here, they spoofed the sender. I erased the subject. It was necessary, but the subject was very, very relevant. and you are showing some time limitation. The deadline is pointed out there so that the user would have to act on it urgently, and this message accelerates the user to react to this email and forget about it. And of course, it's signed by an authorized official signature. So what we have done so far, we have prepared even a template of a phishing mail. Now let's just see where we need to lead the user from that phishing mail. For this, we just need to register a phishing domain. Previously, to look for an interesting domain, they used different utilities. But nowadays, it's not a common practice anymore. The services have started using the domains that we can register. For example, I would like to register a domain phishing.ru, but it had already been occupied. But the service would kindly prompt me with such a phishing domain with the SU in the end. But I would also like to utilize good old methods used by the attackers and the domain names selectors. For example, you just may replace the letters there, or replace one letter for another. For example, here on the upper part of the slide, the second I in phishing has been replaced for an L. And imagine it's written in a very small font, and you won't be able just to tell the difference between I and L in Latin alphabet. Such primitive methods significantly increase the phishing effectiveness, because a user may not even tell a legitimate domain from a non-legitimate one. Then, where they are going to enter their data, we can clone an existing web resource, an email resource, or clone a personal page of a user. If there is no such a resource, if there is no mail, external mail, and yes, such companies do exist, we just need to create something similar to the corporate resource. For this, it's suffice to create an account field creation form with some vague image of a company logo in the background, which will create an illusion that this resource is legitimate, or at least looks legitimate. Once we have gathered so much data, we just need to put them all together as a constructor. Such frameworks do exist. Social Engineering Toolkit, a console tool which is pre-installed in Linux. It's quite simple to use. Or GoFish, for example. It's an open source tool, just like the first one, but GoFish has got a graphic user interface with this GUI, which is quite convenient, allowing you to use these metrics, starting the email, link, credentials. And it creates diagrams and charts. It has quite a lot of forks, allowing you to utilize some of the vulnerabilities of the post email services. For example, like the ones replacing the sender, like I explained in the beginning. EvilGiX, a very cunning web server, which translates this interaction from server to user and user to server, creating an illusion that the user is interacting with a real legitimate service. And of course, such functions do exist in BIS systems. They also have some phishing capabilities for different, with the use of different templates there. And right now, I would like to talk about what else the attackers may use to increase the output. First of all, a relevant subject. In 2020, of course, it's this online work, economic downfall, laying off individuals, laying off employees, etc. But what about emotions? Emotions are also key here. So the more emotional degree you reach, the less your rational part participates in decision making, and emotions take over. What kind of emotions can be used by the attackers? Let's just take a look at them. First of all, it's fear. Fear is probably the strongest emotion that the attackers are using in real life. Let me tell you this anecdote. I had that phishing email earlier this year on my email with lots and lots of grammar mistakes and spelling mistakes, saying, Aleksander, hello, we have not met personally, but I've broken into your smartphone and I got access to all of your photographs, to all of your contacts. And of course, I was terrified. Now I can easily blackmail you. If you do not send me $50 in the amount of bitcoins within 24 hours, then all of your messages, all of your private photos will be sent to all of your contacts. To make sure that I really breached into your phone, just check these are the 4 digits, which are the 4 numbers of your phone number. And that was really true. That was my phone number. At first 10 seconds, I was stunned, I was shocked, and I was scared. I didn't really know what to do. But then my calculator started working in my head, and I started remembering what would be the exchange rate and how much would I have to pay for exchange, and how do I buy bitcoins. They also charge some commission, but then in a few more seconds, like 20 seconds, I started getting suspicious. How did they actually break into my phone? And what was so evil in my photographs and my contacts that they wanted to blackmail me? It was just a list of my grocery shopping and some banking messages. My pictures were, just the pictures of the meters, water meters, power meters, some pictures of nice furry cats from the internet, nothing else, nothing suspicious. And then why did they come up with the 4 last digits of my telephone? Then I started getting calmed down. It was just only that information that I had, my phone number, and that's it. I downloaded an antivirus. I checked my phone. It was clean. And then I started figuring out where they got all those information from. My phone number, my email, my name and surname. Seems like that information was available at another email service to recover my access to email. So they checked that server, got access to that piece of information, and got that information to contact me. Why am I explaining that? Because the emotions really work for such criminals. Even the people who are prepared may get scared and fall victim to such phishing attempts. And an average number of people falling victim to these phishing tricks accounts for 10% among those who work in cybersecurity department. It's much less. It only reaches to 1%. So seems like people can be quite vulnerable to phishing just because of their human emotions. Next thing, how this can be used by the attackers. The attackers like people's greed. People really like get things for free. And the attackers would often use a simple trick. They would introduce themselves as partners, saying, hello, ladies and gentlemen, we have a new joint campaign. Here are your promo codes for your parking in the center of the city, free of charge for a month. And here's a 50% discount for online cinema and 20% discount for grocery delivery online. Everything is available from that link. And it works. People get curious and click on that link and fall victim to phishing attack. Another thing, curiosity. Very often I would see a situation when an attacker would say, hey, take a look at what this fella is doing at this social party. So I got suspected. It's really interesting what this guy can be doing at a social party. And it also happens just twice a year, especially before the Christmas holidays, but still, curiosity is curiosity. Or for example, your bonuses scheme has changed, or your car keys have been found. Annoyance, another example. A lot of spam gets to the email. Sometime later, the customer clicks, please unsubscribe. And if you click on this unsubscribe link, it leads to the phishing website, which runs a code in the browser and infects your PC. Also, the attackers may want to express the desire to help. We are all social beings, so please participate in this social survey just for a couple of minutes. We'd probably agree to do so, and it's all backed up with this notion of urgency, and this is the factor which the attackers very often utilize, this urgency thing, which allows you to do the same in a very short span of time and much more effectively, because it enhances the emotions. As far as you can see, seems like the attackers have almost no limitations but their imagination. And this is how we have smoothly approached this question. How do we combat phishing? Let's just take a look at the two types of approach, technical and organizational one. Technically speaking, I'd show you DMARC, SPF, and DKIM. It's a standard set of measures to protect against phishing, and there are different types of other protection measures which will significantly reduce the successful outcome of a phishing attack. Like, for example, a sandbox. You may have become familiar with such types of solutions like sandbox. All these things would allow you to analyze the incoming mail and verify the attachments for malicious malicious software. Also, secure mail gateway, an excellent tool to combat phishing. I would also like to draw your attention to the protection of the workstations. Overall protection, for example, the installation of a local protection means like EDR solutions and antivirus solutions significantly reduce the chance of the user running a malicious code on their workstations. And the second part is the organizational measures that help you protect against phishing. For example, lower policy rights, strengthened security policy, memos, trainings of which you are aware, and you may even explain this part to me. And I would like just to focus on these memos on combating phishing, and they can be used as some kind of block notes, notepads, A4 sheets that you can stick to the wall right next to your workstation, and they would be just put right next to the fire drill memos, thus alarming the user of a very high importance of phishing protection. Normally, such memos would include information on how to reveal phishing, what to do in case of such an incident, and who you should contact if you suddenly find your credentials elsewhere. These memos do work, and it reminds people about the threat of phishing. And probably one of the most effective ways is, of course, the drills. And exercises. If you have knowledge, that's not quite enough. Knowledge as such cannot be turned into our actions, but the drills and exercises can be of two types. Like, for example, if you take a look at this pathway of an attacker, like we've done, this is what hackers really do to start a phishing campaign. And the second thing is security alarms like approach. Like the previous speaker said here in our session, you may be aware of such solutions. I will briefly just mention that if you didn't hear that in a previous presentation. Security awareness solutions show some theoretical background to the users, allow to have some tests to check and verify whether they have digested this information properly, and it allows to start some phishing training, direct mail. These functions remind me about some simulation systems, and these methods should be used together. They are not replacing each other. They're not supposed to do so. They will have to run along with one another. And currently, I'm finishing this presentation of mine. I'm done. I'll be happy to take your questions. And this particular slide is showing you the means, the information I used to prepare for my presentation. The memo on phishing protection for experts. You can download it. If these links are not clickable for some reason, you can contact me on my Telegram channel and elsewhere where you can contact me. You can use my email and help and ask me to send you the memo. Thank you very much for joining me here for this session. I'll just be sitting here for a few more minutes waiting for your questions. And we have like 10 minutes for your questions to come up, so I'll stick around. And so far, I'm just standing by. Thank you very much. As far as we can see, we don't have questions. Thank you very much for joining me again. Thanks for tuning in, and thank you. Goodbye.